Hi everyone, welcome to this tutorial for Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer in the version of Tommy Emmanuel. While the top tier patrons roll by, a quick reminder that only the first part of the tutorial will be released on YouTube. For full access, please head over to my Patreon page or to my soon-to-be online new website. All links are in the description alongside the link to music notes where you can get the tab and notation file. So if you love the holiday season and you want to add some extra sparkle to your Christmas, then I have you covered. We start out with a stripped down version of Tommy's arrangement so everyone has a good chance of learning this tune. I promise you, it's not too tricky. If you think Christmas is a bit too sweet and sticky and you want to offset those happy feelings with some fresh fingerstyle frustration, then dive straight into the full-blown Tommy Emmanuel version with all the fills and fireworks included. Whatever you do, Merry Christmas and don't forget to have fun. Okay, straight to playing then. Guitar is in standard tuning and all you need is a thumb pick, although I guess it's perfectly possible to play this one without a thumb pick as well. So, straight into the intro. The intro is just 2 bars of the same arpeggio moving up the neck. This is how it sounds. It's a trick we've seen Tommy do in a number of other songs as well. And it's basically an E-augmented arpeggio. It's always playing around with the 5th, flat 5, sharp 5. So, and you're not playing the bass note, so no low open E string. You start with the middle finger, 4th fret on the D string, and a small bar on the 3rd fret across the G and B string. And you're going to add the pinky to the 5th fret on the B string. So you get 4th fret, 3rd fret, 3rd fret with the index finger, and then pinky on the 5th fret B string. You're going to pull off to the bar with a swing feel. And then you're just going to move this chord shape, this arpeggio, up 2 frets each time. So starting on the 3rd fret, 5th fret, 7th fret, 9th fret, and then you're going to end up on an open A string, bass note with a thumb pick, and an open E string on top as the first, let's say, the first 2 notes of the incoming chorus. Once again, that arpeggio part with the swing feel. And straight into the first chord of the chorus. Now in this song, to me, it doesn't feel like there is a verse and chorus. It feels more like a chorus and a bridge, but it's just whatever we want to call it. We're going to dive into the first chorus now, and I'm going to go for a slightly simplified version, and then starting in the second chorus I'm going to add all of the Tommy Emmanuel bits back in. So here we go, one time, already well below concert speed, at one go through the simplified chorus. From that point on, you lead straight into what I call the bridge. So only 2 chords, and I'm even leaving out one extra version, one extra voicing that Tommy Emmanuel does. But let's have a look. The open strings can be quite disorienting. So you start with an open A string, ring finger, 7th fret on the D string, middle finger, 6th fret on the G string, and then pinky, 7th fret on the B string. And you need an open E string on top as well. So open A string, 7th fret, 6th fret, 7th fret, open E string. You start, as explained in the intro, by picking the A string and the E string at the same time, and this gives you just a split second more after that last arpeggio in the intro to move back to the first chord shape. Then on the beat, A string and E string. And then you pick the B string holding this down with the pinky 7th fret. This is where the possibly disorienting part comes in. The E string, in this case the open E string, will always sound lower in pitch than the note you are playing on the B string. And this can mess with your head in the beginning just a little bit. You're looking for that higher note. My reflex is going for the high E string. So in this case it's always on the B string. A string and E string, picking the B string, bass note on the D string, and again an open E string. And then as you head with the thumb pick to the low E string, you pick the G string, holding down the 6th fret. And then as you head back to the D string, you drop down the index finger on the 5th fret on the high E string. I'm dropping the swing feel for now. I'm going to add that back in later. It's just a little bit easier to explain this way. Repick the A string together with the G string and B string at the same time. And as you head to the bass note on the D string, you switch over the index finger from the high E string to the B string and you remove the pinky. And you just complete the bass pattern of that bar. Those 2 bars back to back with each other. And it could be possible just again to play that chord and then back to the open E string. Tommy in this case chooses to play that double stop on the G string and B string. But you could just as well do and just keep the pinky where it's at and just play an open E string instead. So you can play around with this one a little bit. And now, A string together with a high E string and picking the B string in between there. Doing the exact same thing with the bass note on the D string. So E string, B string, E string, B string, while holding down the chord shape and alternating from the A string to the D string. Low E string, high E string, together, both open strings. And then we're going to add the index finger back to the 5th fret as we head to the D string again. Sometimes Tommy plays this just the D string and E string by itself. Sometimes he repicks the note on the B string as well. So again, see what works for you. Just that 1 bar. And now I picked the D string, B string, and E string at the same time. Now, maybe just 1 time with that last A, just separately, no extra harmony note underneath there. Now, I do realize that overlapping technique with the open E string and that 7th fret on the B string, that sort of disconnection between the high E string sounding lower in pitch and the B string sounding higher in pitch, it can and will mess with quite a few people's heads. But in this case, there is actually a really easy solution to this. So you remember, we have that index finger open. We're not using it at this time. So what we're going to do is we're going to drop it down on the 5th fret on the B string. Basically playing the same note as the open E string. So, and we can play this whole melody without touching the high E string a single time. And it's that easy. So if that overlapping technique is too tricky, then just pick the index finger 5th fret on the B string together with the A string and you hammer on with the pinky to the 7th fret. Then you do the same thing as you reach for the bass note on the D string. And then you remove the pinky again as you head to the low E string. And then when you switch back to the D string, you have to quickly switch over the index finger to the high E string for the last melody note. And then straight into the next chord. So you see, in this case, Quite often there isn't an alternative for those open string runs, but in this case it's actually very easy to sort it out using left hand hammer-ons. So once more. And into the next chord. Now for the rest of the tutorial I'm going to stick to Tommy's original fingering, but just know that in each and every section where this melody pops up, we're going to see the same thing over an E chord again in just a few bars. You can use this technique. So one more time with the hammer-ons. And one more time with the open strings. Then you switch over to an E chord, bar across 5 strings on the 2nd fret, starting on the A string all the way down to the high E string, and you add pinky on the 4th fret, high E string, middle finger on the 3rd fret on the B string, and ring finger 4th fret on the G string, giving you an E dominant 7th chord. In Tommy's more complicated version, we're going to look at that in chorus 2, he switches from this chord to a full E chord and back. For this section, just the easy section, we're going to stick to this chord all the way through the next few bars. The first bar is just the chord, B string and E string on top, and just playing through the bass pattern. For one reason or another, Tommy plays only the low E string and the D string in this bass pattern, and he will stick to that bass pattern, just 2 strings, for the next few bars. But you have, let's say, the 5th down in that bar as well, so it's quite possible, if you see me play this throughout the tutorial or the live cover video, that I will go for a 3-string bass pattern here, including the A string as well. It sounds fine, I don't see any reason not to do it, but Tommy always sticks just to those 2 strings. Those first 4 bars all the way through. Next 4 bars, we stick to the same chord, but we are going to let go of the pinky and we're going to raise the bar slightly so that we get an open E string underneath. And we need that open E string almost right away. We pick low E string, G string and B string, and then to the open E string before playing the bass note on the D string. Repicking the B string, and then as we head with the thumb pick back to the low E string, we pick the 4th fret on the G string. And we drop back down the pinky, and as you do that you can drop down the bar as well again. We're going to need that 2nd fret on the high E string now in just a second. So just that first bar on the E chord. And again here, you can choose, you can pick only the high E string, you can include the B string as well. Doesn't really matter as long as you have that bass note on the D string under there. Removing the pinky again and just playing the 2nd fret on the high E string while holding the rest of the chord down. And on the 2nd beat, as we head to the D string, we drop down the pinky on the 5th fret and we play D string, G string and B string at the same time. You don't really need the middle finger here anymore now. And we just continue through the bass pattern E string, D string for the rest of the bar. Now we're going to move up, pinky 7th fret on the B string, ring finger 7th fret on the G string, and then middle finger 6th fret on the D string. Again, you're going to need an open E string underneath there as well on the top string. The reason why we're not using the index finger at this time is because of a fill we are going to add in the 2nd chorus. If you're not using that fill, then feel free to go for this, but also for the switch to the next chord back to A, leaving the index finger open now does make sense. Basically the same picking pattern as on that A chord. E string, B string, E string, B string, E string, B string. Just between those two strings in the melody, down below we keep alternating between low E string and D string, holding down the 6th fret. And again, in this case, we can use the exact same technique using the hammer-on. So again, we're not using the index finger. Again, we just drop it down on the 5th fret, and we're going to play that same hammer-on with the pinky on the 7th fret. See, the exact same thing, just hammering on low E string to the D string and back to the low E string. And whenever you see this section pop up, again, I'm always going to stick to Tommy's original. You can go for this alternative if it feels easier for you. So one more time with the hammer-ons. And one more time with the original fingering. And back to our first chord. And we just alternate through the rest of the bass part. Sometimes Tommy adds a last melody note on the last beat to head into the repeat. Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. See what works for you. That is going to be the theme today. Those last 4 bars starting on the E chord. And the good news is you can play more than half of the song already. First, we're going to recap those first 8 bars. And those were the first 8 bars. Good news is the next 8 bars are basically the same thing. I think only the very last melody note is something different. Let's have a look. That was the only difference all the way at the end, that on that E chord, the melody note is on the high E string with the pinky and not on the B string. So just that last bar on the E chord, it's the same thing you played before, and now instead of playing that last melody note, D string and B string, we're going to move the pinky to the high E string to get that B note on top before ending up in an A chord. So just that last bar on the E chord. So just moving down the pinky 1 string and you're done. Then we end up on an A chord, long A chord, and then Tommy's going to launch into what? The melody you need to head into the bridge. We're going to take a look at that when we get to the bridge. But basically, you can play the whole chorus already. Let me go through those last 8 bars one more time. But there is very little to no difference to what you already know. The chorus. Maybe just for the sake of consistency, one time all the way through that first chorus really slowly, but it's basically the same thing 2 times in a row. From that point on, we dive straight into the bridge, but that is something for the next part of the tutorial. I'll see you there.